All right, welcome to financial counseling. Today is our review for our first exam, and you will have chapters 1 through 4 in our financial counseling textbook, that Polvino and Polvino, and then the topics that we covered from surviving debt. You will have 10 multiple choice questions and 10 short answer questions. After this one, I'll see if you want more multiple choice, more true false, more short answer. Because it's a writing core, there will definitely be short answer questions, but we can play with the mix depending on what y'all are into. All right, so first up, understanding who you are as a person, as a counselor, is going to help you work with your clients. We did money habitudes the first day. So from that, think of some of your responses, some of what we covered when we were in the class when we talked about your first memory with money, thinking about how that might shape who you are and how you deal with money. We learned about the AFC certification, remembering that's a certification, which means that it doesn't mean you have the legal ability to do anything that you couldn't do before. It's more of a signal to our clients. When we saw the ethos, pathos, and logos, we saw that could build our credibility. So clients see that you are certified in something, you have your diploma on the wall. This shows that you have the ability to help them. It's a signal to help them trust you. This course and 204 give you the ability to sit for the AFC exam. You would also need some experience hours to go with that education. They had some specialties within the housing counselor and then a military financial counselor. So remember we talked about how military members have specific benefits that other people in the community in the world might not have access to. The interest rate, things for if they've been actively deployed. So why are we taking this class? What does financial counseling do? You are helping clients to spread their wings and fly. You want them to understand how to deal with this problem the next time it might come up, or for it to never come up again, but they would have the tools necessary to help themselves. We want to influence and motivate them towards goals. That collaborative idea is because if they are vested in the process, if they are coming up with suggestions, coming up with ideas, they're more likely to follow those ideas rather than just you telling them what to do. From every single client, and I've been repeating this in classes, the 3 things we need to know from clients, this is the same for CFPs type stuff. We want to know why they're here, and we want to know what we've got to work with financially. So cash flows, the dollars coming in, the dollars going out, their net worth, which is comprised of assets and liabilities. Knowing what types of accounts they have, knowing what things they might have access to will help me figure out ways to deal with the issue at hand. Recognizing that the issue that they come with may not be the most important issue there is for the client. So you may come up with some underlying issues as well. Remembering that some of those issues might not be something that you can handle in your office, so you have the external referral to the drug counselor, to an employment agency, to whatever it is that you don't have the expertise to help them with. An internal referral would be to somebody else within your own agency that is better versed in student loans or whatever the particular topic is that this client might need help with. We had our 3 forms of financial counseling: remedial, preventive, and productive. Notice that preventive has elements of both remedial and productive. So going into each of those, remedial, that's they've received the eviction notice. They are going through it right now. Something has happened, foreclosure notice, debt collectors are harassing them, they just got in a wreck and now they have these medical bills piling up and they're unable to work, lost their job. These things are going to be intense right now, and they're going to be very motivated to come to a solution. They want to keep a roof over their head, they want to keep eating, So your role would be to empathize with the situation, have the expertise to help them know what resources might be available. Maybe there is something through the law clinics. Maybe there is a way that you can get their medical bill reduced or delayed. We can get them a timeout. We saw different ways we could do that with the foreclosure, eviction, and the credit cards. And we'll go in each of those when we get into the surviving debt stuff. Productive, now they're looking towards the future. Maybe they have just had some children and they want to figure out a plan for college for them. They may not have ever put together a budget, but they're not struggling with things. They're looking at something 20 years away or 5 years away that they want to be able to do. And they're hoping to get some help on maybe that single aspect. And just like with the other clients where they were in that emergency situation, one issue might lead to other issues, and you'll think about how to prioritize what it is they need help with. So maybe they are there because, hey, I just had a baby and I want to give them a good life. I want to set up some sort of college funding for them. How can I do that? And then when you start looking at their cash flows, well, maybe they're living paycheck to paycheck. They don't have extra dollars. Maybe we've got some other ways that we can help them by creating a budget as well before we can get into saving for those future needs. Or they have no retirement savings. So maybe we need to start working with both. Preventive, we've got a little bit of the remedial. They had that emergency situation. I think the example I gave was they got in a car accident. They had to repair the car. For the most part, they're doing okay. They've got retirement accounts, but they don't have an emergency fund. So they have an emergency need right now, but just because they haven't put together that budget, they have not planned for something like this happening. But once we deal with the immediate situation, we can look at longer term things as well. Where financial counselors work, lots of different options. You can start your own business. That's the hanging out a shingle idea. And you could do that right now. And that AFC designation doesn't give you any legal abilities. For the most part, you are not going to be recommending investments for them. You don't need licenses to do something like that because you're dealing with credit, foreclosures, some of those other things we'll get into as this semester progresses. A workplace program, I noticed several of these here are in a workplace. Credit counseling, credit union would both be workplace programs. You're working with specific people. So credit counseling, you are, for the most part, just helping them with dealing with credit issues. A credit union, you might be working with a variety of issues, but it's only to members of that credit union. A credit union is a bank that only certain people can access. It may be because you are University of Alabama alumni, it could be your location, but there's some sort of membership requirement. Credit unions typically will offer slightly better deals than banks because you are in that class. Healthcare programs, you may be working in a hospital, helping clients that are having to pay with cash, they don't have credit, they don't have insurance, helping them understand the bills, and if they are that 501c3 hospital, the charity hospital, they, a nonprofit, must have that low cost to no cost care for low income patients. And you may be working with them, they do have insurance, but you want to explain what the insurance will cover, what it won't. All specifically dealing with their medical bills, medical care. Community-based, we saw VITA, that Voluntary Income Tax Assistance Program, where every February, April, maybe retired accountants, maybe students, different people that would be qualified to help somebody file taxes will hang out at the library, and you walk up, whoever's available, they can help you fill out your taxes. Or maybe something more involved, where you are helping members of, they're the faith-based, a church. So Some churches will require people that are engaged before the wedding happens under the roof of that church to go through some sort of financial counseling, some sort of marital counseling to ensure they're on the same page. We talked about how you might be a saver, and if you're in this program, you're more likely to be a saver than a spender. But let's say one spouse is a saver, one spouse is a spender. How are they going to deal with that in the marriage? Is one coming in with a bunch of debt? Is that debt going to be their responsibility, or are they going to work on the debt together? Could be credit card debt, could be student loans, could be whatever. But getting on the same page with that stuff. University-based, we had this in the past where students from this class and others on campus would volunteer to help in one-on-one situations with other students on campus. Texas Tech has what's called Red to Black, where they do the same thing, but they've opened it up to the community as well. But it would be students within the financial planning program that help out their peers or community members with different financial issues. Extension, that would be the extension of that Red to Black where they go in to help the community. So every land grant based university has an extension program. Part of their mission, because land grant universities get funding from the state, is to help the community in some way. Home First is one of those initiatives here where they help people prepare to buy a home. That's something y'all can volunteer with here. Different government programs. So government employees have different retirement plans. They may have pensions. They have a different setup than a private employer might have. And they'll offer help in understanding how those benefits work. I already mentioned the internal and external referral. So for that person with the emergency situation, they got in a car wreck, they need to figure out their bills, but part of the reason they got in the car wreck is because they were on drugs, they're an addict, so there's also some legal issues that need to be dealt with that you'd have to provide an external referral if they don't already have an attorney to help them with that, and maybe some sort of addiction counselor. So external referral to help them with something that maybe you can't. Maybe you have a woman that comes in, she's been beat, she's got children, she's trying to get away from her husband but doesn't have skills and needs a place to go. So there are women's shelters where they can be safe and secure and get back on their feet while they're dealing with maybe a restraining order or whatever else might need to happen. So external referral for the things you can help them with, internal referral for somebody in your own organization that can help them with their specific issue better than you can. Or maybe you're just overloaded with work right now, so you can't take on this client's issues, even if you do have the ability. Whatever is needed to help the clients. How do you get paid? If you have started your own business, it's kind of up to you. You could charge everybody a flat fee per hour of your help, or more likely, a sort of sliding scale. So those with more money would pay more, those with less money would pay less. In effect, the people that are more well off that you're charging more are sort of subsidizing your work with the lower income people, or the ones that are bankrupt. You can potentially get a deposit to start the work. Recognize that some of these clients won't have a lot of dollars to do it. Other things you can do is you can go out to the community, rent out a room here on campus at the library, and host some sort of workshop. Maybe you charge people to come, or maybe that's a way you're going to recruit more clients. And the workshop could be on, rebuilding credit, could be on understanding student loans, whatever the topic is that you think that you can help a group of people, and there would be a large enough group that would be interested in that topic. If you're working for one of those organizations that we were talking about a minute ago, you're getting a salary. So the organization itself pays you, and then the individuals that you help would just be getting help. Maybe they are a patient at the hospital, maybe they're an employee at that government organization, but they're not paying you anything directly. The organization itself would pay you. We talked about the need, if you are trying to earn the AFC, of getting experience. So there's the requirement of experience hours. You might be volunteering and just doing this for free. VITA, that voluntary income tax assistance, is entirely volunteers. Nobody's getting paid. Well, the clients that are filing their taxes, they might get a refund, but all the people helping them get their refunds or figure out what they owe, you're not getting paid, you're volunteering your time there. We watched Mr. Rogers. He likes all of you just the way you are, just like I do. So you're all special in your own unique way. And with his speech to Congress, or his, presentation, he was able to get funding, and we saw how he used the different elements of ethos, pathos, and logos. Pathos was the elephant. That was the emotions. That was the things that is the biggest element of convincing somebody to do something. The ethos, he showed that he was an expert in his field. He mentioned that I've been doing this for years. I work one-on-one with students. I'm creating the show. I'm doing all these different things. Logos, he gave the example of, hey, when we started running out, all these individual organizations came in and gave us enough funding to continue. So the numbers made sense. He appealed to Senator Pastore. Hey, I know you care about families just as I do. I know you care about the children and the future. Connecting on that emotional level. Ethos, pathos, and logos, and you've got the link to watch the video again there. Think about how they apply in financial counseling. So it's the same idea. We're communicating and we're trying to help clients achieve, whatever goals they might have. With ethos, you have your AFC certification, you've got your diploma, you've got the collared shirt that you're wearing. So all of that is communicating something. It's communicating some sort of credibility where they can trust that you know what you're talking about. You have some expertise in this area. Pathos, you are demonstrating through the way you interact with them, the way you communicate. Speaking to, oh wow, that's rough. You're not judging their heroin addiction. You are trying to help them with their financial issues. Maybe don't walk home after payday that particular block because that's where your dealer lives. Maybe find an alternate route and it'll make it easier for you to avoid. But understanding that even if you don't have that addiction, there's a way you can empathize. And my example was the Cheetos, where I set rules for myself. I don't have to walk a different block. I might go down the chips aisle, but if it's not on sale and I'm not craving it, then I'm not going to buy it. So I set little limits for myself because I know the Cheetos are bad for me. Logos, the logic for financial planning, I gave a couple of examples on dealing with debt. If we have multiple debt, dollars and cents, here's what makes sense here. Tackle the highest interest rate first. Pay that off and you'll save your client the most money. But pathos, we have that snowball strategy where you first go to the smallest debt. This one's only $500, everything else is $1,000, $5,000, $8,000. If I can tackle that $500 one first and knock it out, even though it was lower interest than some of those other ones, there's that sense of accomplishment. Maybe I'm more motivated to continue. If I'm trying to go for the $8,000 one that's the highest interest rate, I'm not really seeing the progress. And so maybe it's going to be easier for me to do the 500 one. Okay, yes, I can do this. And then maybe switch to the dollars and cents, the logo side. Logos can also be shown in, there I've got crunched out budget. So creating a budget for them. Here's the dollars and cents. Here is what you can afford to pay in rent. Here's what we can do to set up a budget for you. Maybe we've got that envelope system where this is your envelope for entertainment. Once that's gone, you can't spend anymore. We know we need this much for rent. We know we need this much for the things to keep a roof over our head and food in our belly. But setting up different ways that work for the client using both logos and pathos. Your ethos is the credibility that you bring. All three together is how you're going to help the clients. Yes?
Did you say that the pathos is like the elephant, like the biggest
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then logos and ethos are the rider on that elephant. So we saw the visual in the video. And most important is the pathos. If they don't think you're connecting with them, if they don't think you are on their side, they're less likely to trust anything else. We talked about different ways that we can communicate. You will need to, and so back on that ethos, pathos, and logos. So I'll tell you what I'm looking for. I want you to be able to know what each one of those is and how it could be applied in financial counseling. Different ways we can get compensated. Each of these three forms, you'll need to know those and an example of each. So remedial, getting eviction, notice, preventive, elements of both productive and remedial. With productive, hey, I'm thinking about the future. Preventive, I got in the car crash, but I haven't really been budgeting well, even though I'm well paid and I've got all these different assets to cover it. So pull some money out of an account and then deal with future things. The three things you want from each client, purpose of financial counseling, a little bit about what is AFC.
And what was the purpose of financial counseling again?
We want to help them spread their wings and fly. We want to empower them in a collaborative approach to be able to succeed in the future.
Okay.
So if they face that same issue again, they won't need your help.
All right.
We're trying to sort of work our way out of a job with counseling.
Okay.
Communication. We talked about different ways we can do this. Know a few of them and know how you can connect to a client with each, how you're going to be able to communicate differently, strengths and weaknesses of each. So talking face to face, we'll see that in the communication process, we're always communicating something. So whether you are speaking or not, you're all communicating something to me right now. I'm the one talking, but coming back to me is the looks on your faces. Are you taking notes? Are you making eye contact? Are you looking out the window and seeing a bird out there? I don't see a bird. But whatever you're doing is communicating something. When we're face to face, what you're wearing communicates something as well. Think about like when you walk through a grocery store and you see somebody, you can't help but have some sort of thought about them. You are maybe thinking, that's a lot of Cheetos in that grocery cart. Maybe you shouldn't be buying so many Cheetos. What they're wearing, are they white collar? Are they blue collar? Their age, are they ill? Whatever they've got going on, you're unable to do anything else, but like you are going to automatically have some sense of knowledge, whether it's true or not. But you're going to make some sort of judgment about who they are. Are they a danger to you? Are they just a random person shopping? So talking, we've got a lot that we can work with as far as that communication process. Video chat, we still have a lot of the same things. We talked about how we've got the different backgrounds that you can put in Zoom, the different tools that we can have that professional office behind us. So if you're meeting with a client, what's the background I want? Maybe the background that I want to use with my friends would be different than what I'm going to use with clients in a more professional setting or with family. Phone, now I am losing the ability to see the interest or disinterest in their eyes, what they might be wearing, the different things that communicate to me that way. But I still have what I had before with talking and video chat, their word choice, the rate, the tone. I gave the "you look nice today" or the "you look nice today." Same words, but different tone. So if that was written, it would be up to you to interpret the tone behind it. So now when we go into letters, instant messages, text message, email, Facebook message, it's just words. If we put an emoji there, put a smiley face, "you look nice today" with a smiley face, that means one thing. You mean "you look nice today" with a winky face means another thing. So we can add context to those things where they would have probably gotten that if we were talking. They could hear my tone, they could see my face. If it was just on the phone, they wouldn't be able to see my face, but they could hear my tone. So the different things we can do to add context, add understanding so that we both clearly know what's happening. There's clear communication. And the further we get away, so the letter, unless it's a mass letter, which it might just be to a specific group, a little more personal instant message that was directly to you. Text message, email was probably just to you. When we get into Facebook status, Twitter, something where it's just to the whole world. Anybody that wants to see it can see it, unless you've set your Facebook private. But the social media that you've set to be available to the public, you can't be as intimate with that message because it's not to any one specific person. It's not to any one specific group. It's just to anybody that might happen to see it. And with those social media things, thinking about what maybe your profile would share. So if you've got a profile picture, is it a professional one? Is it something that grandma would want to see, or something that is less professional or shows, I really love this sports team or whatever it might be? That's communicating something, and that's going to add some flavor, some context to whatever your post might be, positive or negative. And with email, Outlook, we have the same thing. If you are using your Outlook here at school to apply for jobs, think about what your profile picture might be as a professional. Okay, so we're always communicating. It doesn't matter whether you're speaking or not, you are communicating something. And we see that in the different levels of intimacy and communication, so I gave examples of that throughout. The word choice I mentioned, so you would explain how something works differently to your 8-year-old niece versus your friend in the same class. If you were trying to explain a budget to an 8-year-old, you'd probably choose different words and use different examples. So the choice of words depends on your audience. What are they going to get the most out of? The goal is to communicate the best you can. So what is that audience going to understand? As far as the word choice, what are they going to connect to? Actions could be like hand gestures. Am I like broad, expansive, or am I more closed off? The spacing, depending on who you're talking to, talking very close to their face might be appropriate. For others, you might be a little bit further back, but that's adding something. It could be intimidating to some for you to get right in their face, or it could be, maybe a romantic partner, and it's fine. So communicating something different depending on who it is and what that action might be. Tonality, am I shouting at you? Am I whispering? That's adding something as well. And that tonality can vary by word. So am I emphasizing certain words? Rate, how fast somebody is speaking. People tend to talk faster when they're nervous, but then there's also some just within the U.S. We in the South are probably going to be talking slower than somebody from New York. So Lewis might have a faster pace of talking than others here. And just recognizing that there's some of that difference there, but also recognizing that you can consciously slow your pace down if needed, or speed it up. Already mentioned volume. Nonverbal was the gestures, also what I'm wearing. Am I clean? Am I smelly? Those things are going to communicate something to whoever I'm talking to. I'll talk a little bit about differences between the ways men and women communicate. And some of that, I think, is going away, but men do still communicate in a more assertive way versus the cooperative of how women tend to. Initial impressions. So you are already starting to build that initial impression with your clients before they get to your office, before they even see you. So your website, if you've got one, would have communicated something to them. The neighborhood where you're located, was it difficult for them to get to you? Is it a nice office? Is it well decorated? All of that is giving them some initial impression. And then when they walk in and see you, what are you wearing? Do you look tired? Is your hair all messed up? This is going to add to how they feel about you. Do they trust you? The initial impression, you came off professional, you had an appropriate setup in your office, you had some diplomas on the wall. Okay, I trust that this is a solid person. Societal expectations, some of that's going to vary. We talked about the background of your client and how if they had a bad experience when they were a child with an attorney, their house is foreclosed upon, they may kind of lump you in that group. So they're already going to start with a little bit less trust. Societal expectations could also work in your favor of, hey, you're a financial counselor, you're here to help. Solid office, this is somebody that can help me. Dynamic quality, are you more outgoing? Are you more reserved? That's going to communicate something, and with different clients, one might do it better than the other. Basic value similarity. Maybe, I think the example I gave in class was where I had that client counselor role play, and the client really liked his car, needed to make some extra money. I think he had a Mercedes or something, and was paying child support. So counselor, they both shared the similar value of, yes, let's make sure we're paying child support, make sure the kid is taken care of, but the counselor was not about the car, and so just dismissed out of hand any ways that maybe we could have kept that car, and just jumped to, okay, sell that car and get something else and take on an extra job. Basic value similarity, they had this basic similarity with the child, but understand that you can try to meet the clients where they are. Status, they may be intimidated if maybe you come in wearing a fancy ball gown and they just got off work. So think about what you're communicating to the client, who your core clients will be. Maybe you don't need the 3-piece suit for this job. Maybe you want to be in a polo and khakis or something more approachable, so that they're not thinking, oh man, I can't afford this place. This is not the kind of person that's going to be able to help me. They don't understand my situation. Stopping a person's world. If they are there for that remedial thing, they are probably already in this position. I'm about to be evicted. I'm about to be homeless. What can I do? They're very motivated to solve the problem. But they could get distracted by something else. Maybe that wasn't the issue. Maybe it's not as pressing. You can stop the world by, at some point, maybe using an unusual word to kind of like snap them back into, oh, they're talking to me. Give a ridiculous example of something. You will need to duplicate this chart, but recognize that this is always going, so it's going to be circular. There's going to be another arrow going back. I am, let's say I'm the sender right now, but you're also the sender as well. So I'm sending my words. The way I do it is going to change how you bring it in. So I've got the message, it's going, in this case, through my voice, through me standing here, wearing this, and adding slides. So all of that is what's going to you. That's the channel. The decoding, how do you interpret it? I may think something is very clear in my mind, and you're taking it in a completely different way and understanding something else. And if I just see your face showing, oh, I understand this, I might not realize that we are talking about different things. There's something missing there. The noise is construction outside. The AC is too cold. You're tired. You're distracted. You've got an exam in some other class. You've got a personal issue going on. Things that make it more difficult for you to concentrate on what's going on in this specific environment right now. And some of that we can help. with the encoding and decoding, asking clarifying questions, summarizing things, making sure that you understand what I'm talking about, that we're doing the same thing, and then you asking me questions helps with the encoding and decoding. Same thing in a regular conversation with your friend, with your mom, with a client, asking those summarizing questions, asking little things to make sure that you are both clearly communicating what you want to. Constant influences on communication, motivation. Do you really want to learn this? Does your client really want to be there? If they're facing that eviction notice, they probably really want to be there. If they were required by a judge, there was a court ordered, you're filing for bankruptcy, you have to go see a financial counselor first before I'll sign off on anything, they may not want to be there. They may want to move on with their lives. So how motivated they are to learn it. Along with motivation goes those other issues, the noise, the interference. Maybe you do want to learn this. Maybe this is a required class and you're just taking it to get the writing core. Maybe you really want to be a financial counselor. Different levels of motivation in any class, in any situation, will impact how much you take from that or how much attention you pay to it. And just like being tired, being distracted, having other things on your mind will make you less motivated. If you have something that's more of a priority, you, I don't know, twisted your ankle on the way to class and your ankle really hurts, that's going to be very distracting. That would make it hard for you to have this as a priority. You would rather fix your foot. Source credibility. Does the client trust that you know what you're talking about? And we looked at the diplomas on the wall, the way we dress as communicating some of that credibility. Degrees earned, certifications, designations, things like that that can help. Information difficulty. Did they take a time value of money class? Did they know how to use a financial calculator? Explaining some of these concepts might be more difficult for somebody, even though they could be brilliant in paleontology and understand all the dinosaur bones and eras that I don't, but they wouldn't know how to use a financial calculator. So it's just, you've spent time on it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are smarter, it's that you spent time on this specific subject, and that's where you're helping them. So the information might be more difficult for them to understand because they haven't spent 4 years in college studying it, or more, they don't have the accounting degrees. Organization, how you put it together. If you jump to 2/3 of the way through the story at the beginning, they're not going to have the relevant context to understand what's going on. So the way that you organize it, recognizing that different people have different learning styles. So for me, I'm a very visual learner. I would want to see the charts. I would want to read it. I don't do podcasts or books on tapes because I'll get distracted. I've tried it on road trips. A chapter will go by and I'll realize I haven't been paying attention to it because I've been daydreaming about something else. But if I'm reading, I can focus on it. I can't read and drive. Primacy and recency. So when did this issue happen? For financial counseling, it's probably pretty recent, and it's probably at the front of their mind because it's an important issue to them right now. But let's say you are talking to a friend about something that happened 5 years ago. It's not as recent, memories have faded a little bit, but you're sharing the nostalgia of the good times that you spent together 5 years ago. Cool, but it's not the primary thing. It might be a fun story to get into now, but more important is, where are you going to go for lunch today? So that's going to be more front of mind because your tummy's rumbling. Communicative style. We talked about a little bit about the difference between how men and women communicate, and within that there are other differences as well. Some people are going to be more receptive to different communicative styles. So some clients might be much happier with me, or some would be much happier with you, just depending on how we communicate and how we connect to people. I tend to info dump and talk faster than most in the South, maybe not Lewis, but I have a faster speaking pace, just normally. That might not be what client A wants. Betty might want somebody else that communicates in a different way. So I can adjust that a little bit. And we also talked about how I'm going to vary that depending on the audience as well. So the 8-year-old niece, I'm explaining things differently. I'm using different words. I may be sitting down on the floor with them versus standing in front of a classroom. So different styles depending on the setting. In a classroom, this is fairly appropriate. For an 8-year-old in my living room, me standing and lecturing is not going to get their attention. So you vary that some depending on who you are speaking to. Obstacles, inadequate preparation. So the client came, they didn't bring the lease, they have an issue with their landlord, but without the lease, I can't get into specifics. I can talk about it, like generally this is how it works, but without the specific lease document, I don't know if they can sublease. I don't know what the parameters are for them to break the lease and leave early. They didn't bring all their banking account info. They didn't keep up with the budgeting thing that I helped them with 2 weeks ago. Vague instructions, you just say, okay, come back and make a budget and come back and tell me how you spent it. If they've never made a budget before, they're gonna need more hand-holding. They're gonna need some examples if this is how it works, maybe a form, maybe some of the online apps or tools that we can put in with more hands-on time spent with it. Culture. Some are going to be more open about talking about finances versus others. Some of that could be within a workplace. Technically, you can talk about your salary, you can share it with coworkers. Employers will sometimes try to tell you not to, but legally they can't, because they don't want people arguing, oh, hey, how come Betty's getting more money than me? I've been here longer and I've been working harder and doing more things. I should get paid more than Betty. Okay, going into surviving debt. Credit, we looked at as the ability to pay for something later. I can buy it now and pay later. Somebody else is paying the vendor, whoever it is. I'm going to get lunch. Visa is going to buy me lunch, but I have to pay Visa back. Now, if I do this late, I'm going to pay interest. So my lunch didn't just cost $15, it's going to cost $18, $20, however it turns out, depending on how fast I pay it back. So it could be a very expensive lunch. So advantages, I can buy things now. I could use it potentially as an emergency fund. I got stranded in the middle of nowhere because my car broke down. I'm able to use the credit card to pay a mechanic to fix it, to rent a car, to do whatever things I need to do. Maybe get a hotel in this town that I didn't plan on visiting. And it's convenient. So I also have the ability to, if I lose my wallet, I can cancel that credit card. Or if I drop the credit card, leave it somewhere, I inform Visa, whatever credit card company I've got, hey, it's been stolen, it's been lost. They'll say cool, and they will just decline all further purchases on it to limit their loss. If it's already been used by the time I report it, they won't charge me for that. So I've got some protection. As long as I let them know as soon as I knew in a timely manner, they will not charge me for whatever the thief put on it. And they'll probably cancel those transactions if they can. I can also build up some sort of rewards points. So if I'm paying it off in time, I'm not paying interest. I am building up airline miles. I'm building up cash back on certain purchases, different percentages. We saw that with the rewards card. And I'm building my credit score so that in the future, somebody else is going to be more likely to lend me money and charge me a lower interest rate. Disadvantages, it makes it really easy for someone to go spend dollars. You're out with your friends shopping, maybe you buy a little bit more than you would have otherwise. Because it's easy, you can do it right then and you can spend it before you even have the dollars, which makes it harder for you to set aside dollars to save. It makes it harder for you to afford things later. It's going to hurt your credit if you keep staying behind on that. The interest rates on those make it very expensive. To get it, it's going to be a very low cap, maximum amount that you can actually spend on the credit card at first. Building a credit history is going to make a difference. You got to have utilities, so if you're paying your utility bill, you've started building up credit, and it could be paid directly from your bank account. You could have it set up to automatically do that. I also mentioned with utilities, if you live in Alabama, you probably have higher utility bills in the summer. When it's super hot, you got to run the air conditioning. Winters aren't too crazy cold here, so your bill is going to vary throughout the year. Fall and spring, you may not be using AC or heat as much at all. So your bills will vary throughout the year, but the utility company allows you to say, hey, take the average of last year and charge me that amount every month. And then you've got something that you can plan a little bit easier. The better we do with that, the lower our interest rates will be on other stuff. Every bill you pay is a positive to your credit history. If you miss a payment, that's going to take a hit. We can get our credit report. You guys did that for yourself. So making sure that everything was correct and realizing that there's a lot of information there, but it's not going to go into certain specific things. Nobody knows what you're buying. They don't know your religion. They don't know anything else. They just know dollars and cents. Here's what you got going on. Is this a credit card? Is this a student loan? Is this a mortgage? So type of credit. Do you have a good mix of credit? If it's all credit card, that's not going to be as strong as if you had a credit card, a car loan, a mortgage, a student loan. This mix of credit contributes to your credit score. The amount that you borrowed for that car, for the mortgage, for whatever, what is your credit limit on the credit card? If I have 3 credit cards and each of them has a $20,000 limit, I could be $60,000 in debt tomorrow. So that's a risk factor. The date that whatever happened, the date I opened the account, the date I paid the bill, how much is left that I owe, and my payment history. Am I paying regularly? Am I paying late? Am I paying the minimum balance on a credit card every month? So they don't know specifically what I'm buying. They might know that I went to the hospital and paid some money, but they don't know what that was for. Did I break my leg, or did I get in a fight? They won't have my criminal background in there. They won't know race or gender, religion. If I've borrowed from some friend, that's not going to show up. It's going to have to be something that is from a bank, from a car dealership, from a credit card, things that are reported. FICO collects all that information, and then Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, our 3 credit reporting agencies, will take that information to compile the report that you can get for free. If I am planning to buy a home, if I'm planning to do something else, there will be credit checks. They're going to see, am I worthy of them lending me money? If so, how much? And what type of a rate? How risky am I? The worse my credit report looks, so you won't see a credit score here, but the worse I've done, and they're going to get a score when they ask for it, the higher the interest rate they're going to charge me. So it's expensive to be poor. I'm going to pay more money for the same thing somebody with a great credit history had. So building responsible habits early on will save you money over your lifetime. We get our free credit report, and we can get that from all 3 of those now weekly, versus it used to be once per year from each. We'll see how long that lasts. And then there's different scores, and FICO isn't the only one. There's specific ones for car dealerships that they would look at, whether you're going to pay the car off. But we generally think of FICO as the credit score. And you can see here where those scores are at. And we saw with some of the credit cards that you would not be eligible for a rewards credit card if you were poor or even fair. You'd have to potentially get a secured card. that point to start rebuilding credit so you could get the nicer ones. The secured card being the one where you put in a deposit, $200. They give you a credit card that you use as a credit card for 12 months, 18 months, however long it is. And then they say, okay, you're responsible. Here's your $200 back. Now it's an unsecured credit card. The higher your score, the lower the interest rates you will pay. Highest score, you are doing solid things here. So understand what these factors are, and then you're also going to want to know the percent that each one does. So I'll specifically ask you for the specific factors that determine credit. You'll need to know payment history is the heaviest one. It's 35%. So know all of these specific percentages for what determines a credit score. Payment history, have I been responsibly making payments over however long I've got credit? We can do that nice thing for our children by opening an account for them or putting them as an authorized user on a bank account. So they're building up at least length of credit history. How much do I owe? Did I recently take on new credit? So if I just opened up a bunch of new things, I'm more risky. And then the credit mix I mentioned earlier, was it all credit card? Was it credit card, home loan, car loan, student loan? Do we have a mix of different types of debt? If we have a client with bad credit, we've got ways that we can help them. So I've already talked about that secured credit card. Having somebody else put your name on their credit card as an authorized user. If they're being responsible and paying it back, that's going to help you. That's going to show up on your credit report. Issue is getting somebody to trust you to do that. Same thing with the cosigner. A cosigner and authorized user on a credit card. So a cosigner, I am saying that, hey, Libba is getting an apartment. She doesn't have credit history. I will cosign on that lease. Or a parent might do that. Like, I'm not living there, the parent isn't living there, it's her, and they're going to go to her for the rent first. But if she doesn't pay it, well, I co-sign, so I'd be responsible. So they would come to me. So think about whether or not you trust that you are not going to be stuck with this debt. My brother had that happen to him, where he basically bought a guy's car and paid rent. He's got, yeah. But if they co-sign, they are just as responsible as you. If you have co-signed on somebody to help somebody out and they're not making the payments, at a certain point think, am I going to take a mortgage out in the next 5 years, in the next whatever? I can just let this go. All it's going to do is give me bad credit history. They're not kicking me out of this apartment because I don't live there. They are not repossessing something that I had access to anyway. If I co-signed on a car loan, it's still not my car. I'm not on the title or anything. So at a certain point, just take the hit on the credit. But if you are getting somebody to co-sign for you, so maybe your apartment, as a student, you get help from your parents, they co-signs, and you're able to build some credit off of that. A small loan, so a bank might not be willing to lend you $200,000, but they might be willing to lend you $2,000. So getting a smaller loan, paying that back, showing you're responsible, and maybe they trust you with a larger loan later, and you've built up the payment history. Credit utilization ratio. I know I mentioned this in class. I won't expect you to know it on this exam, but the idea is you're not spending the entire amount. So we talked about the credit limit. If you've got the $20,000 available to you on a credit card, if you're spending $19,000 every month, then maybe you need a higher cap. So we want to be between 30 and 1%. That's what they kind of look at as, are you utilizing this wisely? So the remaining amount, if I'm making a big purchase, every once in a while, sure. Maybe I'm taking a trip, maybe I'm paying tuition, something that's not coming up regularly. But most months, I would want to have my debt divided by the amount that I could get, the cap, to be no more than 30%. Ideally between 30 and 1. Evictions, and again, that credit utilization ratio, I mentioned it, but I didn't have the slide up for it, so I won't expect it to be on this test. Eviction, if I get an eviction notice, there's certain things that have to be on that. Before I get the eviction notice, hopefully I have realized that I'm in a situation where I'm not going to be able to pay rent. And maybe I communicate. I reach out to the landlord and say, hey, here's the deal. I'm not going to be able to pay the full amount, but what if I pay this and help with the landscaping, or pay the excess off later with interest, and get that in writing. So any sort of deal that you make with the landlord, you want to have some sort of paper trail. It could be via text message, email, some type of proof that this conversation happened and that landlord agreed to it. If not, they could come back later and it'd be your word against theirs in court. Okay, so if we do have the eviction notice, or we're approaching it, we want to read the lease. That was that inadequate preparation. They got the eviction notice, but they didn't bring me the lease. It's hard for me to help them with that. If I've got the lease, maybe there is a way that I can sublease. I can allow somebody else to take over the apartment and step into basically my shoes in that contract, where now they pay rent and I'm not responsible for anything. Or the lease might say, well, you forfeit your deposit, and if they break anything, you are still responsible for that. So it depends on the lease, and either way is legal, but you could still be on the hook even if you do sublease it to someone. You may be responsible for finding the new tenant, or the landlord might be responsible for finding the new tenant. If the landlord's responsible, you want to make sure that they are making attempts in good faith to find a new person to rent this unit. Negotiating, already mentioned how we could do that. If there is an eviction hearing, make sure you show up. If you don't show up, there's going to be a default judgment. A default judgment means that whatever the landlord says is right. That's what you owe, that's what the back penalties are, this is the damage you've done. You have to show up and defend, hey, this is correct, but no, I didn't cause all that water damage. That was because of the landlord's negligence in taking care of the property. You can raise any of your defenses of like that substandard living condition. Plumbing wasn't fixed. It was constantly a swamp in the basement of this house I was renting. There was a leak in the roof. There was these other things that meant that it was not livable. That's why I haven't been paying rent. I shouldn't be evicted. Catch there, I have to be setting those dollars aside in a separate account, not just spending it on gumballs or whatever. I have to show that, hey, I have been setting aside these dollars monthly, but I'm not giving it to the landlord because they are not doing what they're supposed to do. Rent normally accepted late. If you can show that you have been paying on the 15th, even though it's due on the 1st, for the past 6 months, and there have been no issues, no late fees, no anything, well then why is it suddenly not okay now? If the landlord has put you on notice, like gone around and posted up, hey, rent must be due on the 1st or we'll start charging these fees, then they put you on notice. Retaliatory eviction, they don't like you because you're loud, neighbors complained about you, you turned them down for a date, something like that, where it has nothing to do with you paying rent or being a bad tenant. It's just that they don't like you. So that'd be a retaliatory eviction. And all those would allow you to say, hey, I don't owe this money. I shouldn't be evicted. If that doesn't work, or if none of those apply, the judge rules against you, you can still appeal. And that could get you a little bit of a timeout before having to find a new roof over your head. If we're able to break a lease, so this would be before the eviction notice, we want to let the landlord know as soon as possible. We're reading the lease, we're making sure that we're following whatever the rules are, and we're thinking about it. If breaking the lease requires you to forfeit the deposit and 2 months rent, and you've only got a month and a half left on your lease, it's cheaper for you to just continue to stay there and not break the lease. So doing the math on that of what's going to be most advantageous. If you do have to continue paying rent, until the landlord finds a new renter. Make sure that they are actually searching for that new tenant. If you have put some holes in the wall, fill up those, and like just hanging pictures type things. If you've done major damage, fix what you can to get some of your deposit back. Military deployment. So if you are active duty military and you've been deployed somewhere else, overseas to another base, wherever it might be, you have special defenses against being able to be evicted or penalized for breaking the lease. So if the government is sending you to Georgia, you can break your lease here and not have to be hit with some of those same things. And this doesn't even have to be in the lease. These are just protections provided for military. With that eviction notice, we have the right to a trial. The notice itself should say when I have to get out. Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? Is it whatever? But it'll have a specific date of when I have to leave the premises. Option to cure is this is how much money you owe. If you pay that, and that dollar amount will be like all the back fees, and maybe they're going to accumulate. It'll be like, if you give me $1,700 today, that takes care of the back rent owed plus the late penalties. But tomorrow that might be more, next week it might be more. But here is the right to cure. $1,700 plus whatever additional late fees accrue by the time you actually pay me. And you have 30 days to cure, or whatever that time period is. You may be able to reach out and get some help with rent. That's going to be really hard to do because there are very limited funds to go around. Okay, so eviction was when you were renting. Foreclosure is when you were buying. This is with your mortgage. So same idea here. We want to reach out to the bank before it's an issue, before I've missed a payment, and try to work something out. The bank is more likely to try to work with you than the landlord. The landlord can just rent to somebody else. It's a quicker process, where a bank has to go through this very time-consuming ordeal to first foreclose upon you, go to court, sell the house. They don't want the house, they want your money. So we can negotiate with the bank. We can potentially refinance to a longer term or to a new term where it's going to take us more time, but we pay less per month, maybe something that we can afford. Different ways that we can be foreclosed upon. The bank, that is the one that lent you the mortgage, the money for the mortgage. They've got the title to the house until you pay it off, but they're not telling you how to paint the walls. City, so you didn't pay your property taxes. That was dollars that were in escrow when you were paying off a mortgage, so the bank was kind of taking care of it for you. This way you may have a sudden sticker shock of, oh no, I owe for the entire year, I wasn't expecting this bill. They're not going to do that right away. You got to get pretty far behind. They'll work with you some.
Do we need to know those individual four types for the foreclosure, like the lender sees collateral?
Maybe not. I don't know. Wouldn't be bad to know though. Court judgment. So this could be you owed unsecured debt. They went to court and they got a judgment against you, and they got some collateral now. They can take the house. Condo fees, HOA fees. If you were paying them, it's a lien against the house, and then when you try to sell, they can take it. That process, they have to give you the notice. They have to give you, just like with the eviction, the right to cure, what could be owed. If you don't pay today, what's going forward. You can delay by saying, hey, you misspelled my name, this isn't the right amount. Wells Fargo had the mortgage and I paid them last month's, it just didn't communicate to this new bank that bought out the mortgage, which you have no control over. Banks can buy and sell mortgages. Delaying, just asking the judge for more time, making those arguments that, hey, there's something wrong with the notice, or I did pay it, the amount is wrong, something like that. Afterwards, if it does get foreclosed upon, you have the ability to buy the house back at auction. Maybe there's a short sale. If they do sell the house, there could be a surplus where they sold it for more money than you owed them. If there's a deficit, you would still owe the bank the remaining amount. depending how they work it out. They might set it up where, hey, we sell it, whatever we sell it for, you're free and clear, you don't owe anything else. So some of that will vary based on what the bank actually does. Right to reinstate and redeem takes a long time to actually foreclose. So the bank doesn't really want to do it. It's going to be expensive for them. Procedural defenses, that was, hey, you misspelled my name, this is the wrong address typed on the form, the wrong amount, there's some sort of issue just with this form. So finding anything wrong on there, we've got a delay. The timing was wrong. It should have been 45 days because this was the date that I missed, and they tried to make it 15 days later. If you've been able to pay them a little bit less, just like with the eviction notice, maybe that can be grounds to, you still owe the money, but we can at least delay it some and keep a roof over our head a little bit longer. Asking the court for mercy, explaining your situation, they may give you more time before you actually have to leave. Bankruptcy, just filing gives you that temporary timeout, whether you're approved or not. We've got 60 days or so with a roof over our head where we're not paying a mortgage and maybe are able to figure out another situation. So that's just a timeout. Already talked about the deficiency or surplus. Okay, with debt, we want to prioritize. We want to stay alive, keep the roof over our head, food on our plate. So we pay those things first. Pay your rent, pay your mortgage, buy groceries. Ignore the credit card debt because that's unsecured. All they can do is hurt your credit, which at this point it's probably already hurt. We'll go through these fairly quickly because we're running out of time. Secured stuff, they can take things, so we have a priority in paying that. Unsecured, they can't take anything from us. All it's going to do is hurt our credit score at worst. I want to keep my utilities on, so just enough that they don't shut off my heat, air conditioning, water, gas, however it's running, and potentially declaring bankruptcy if we need to. If we do declare bankruptcy, strategically doing it. So don't do it right before I get that medical procedure. Don't do it right before I pay a bunch of stuff on my credit card that I needed to buy. So you can kind of set that up. If there's a court judgment against you, especially if it's criminal where they could put you in prison if you don't pay this debt, or take away your driver's license, professional MD licenses to practice law, to do whatever it is that your business is, like cosmetology, they could take away that. Housing, we want to keep the roof over our head. Auto loans, we kind of talked about how you could take the car back to them and say, hey, you're going to repossess it, but either way, communicating ahead of time if we can, but they've got collateral on it. With utility bills, if you are disabled, if you have children, they may be nicer about shutting heat off in the middle of a Michigan winter. Child support, they can garnish wages. Home mortgage, when we fall behind, because we are going to be homeless. Taxes, same thing. They can take things away from you. It could be the home. With student loans, we had 2 ways that we could get a timeout, but they can garnish stuff, so we want to prioritize that. We had forbearance, I'm broke, I can't pay it, and we had deferment. I'm a full-time student, so now not only do I get a timeout, but I can take on additional student loans. Taxes, all those government ones where they can take dollars away from us. Lower priority, these unsecured loans that all they're going to do is hurt your credit score. Debt collectors are trying to get you to pay just because they are guilting you into it, you're feeling stressed about it. Prioritize staying alive, being able to keep the roof over your head and food on your plate. Skipping credit card payments or just paying the minimum balance, not normally recommended, but if it's the choice between that or buying groceries, do that. Potentially negotiating to reduce that debt. The debt collector says, hey, you owe $10,000. Okay, what if I pay $7,000? They probably bought it for $8,000, $9,000. They paid less for it than you actually owe. or just negotiating a longer time to pay it back. Refinancing, mentioned that with the house. Reducing expenses, increasing income. We had some different strategies for that. With these, understand we talked about rent to own. So we saw some examples there where I think we looked at a refrigerator and saw that we would pay basically double if we bought it from Aaron's rent to own versus buying it directly from the manufacturer or like a Lowe's, Home Depot type place. So recognize that it'll be almost twice as much with rent to own because of the way they charge it, and they can take it back from you if you don't pay it all off. Payday loans, talk some about that. Those are terrible. You're just digging a deeper hole. If you have a job, you can get it, and your budget isn't really going to change by the time you have your next paycheck, but now you owe 50% on that loan, and that's going to jump up. It could be 800% with different fees and over time. Title loan, the auto title, you're giving them the title to your car that you paid off, and they're going to give you half the value of your car in cash. If you can't pay it back, they take the car. Declaring bankruptcy, we can get our time out on the foreclosure. We can protect some assets, but it's not going to take away things that we owe the government. Those student loans won't disappear. Probably not. You could potentially get the student loans to disappear. Some costs. Talked about the timing already. Do it after you get that medical procedure done. Resources that we can get to help us. Or taxes. Some lawyers, we saw the law clinics here. Okay, questions on that? Read your stuffs. You got the books. Email me with questions. Anything? Yeah.
What was the format again? It was 10 multiple choice and then
10 short answer. All right, roll tide.